Something else we worry a lot about is very specific cars. So there's specific issues with specific cars. I tell people the final step here, we've gone through, think about all the different steps we've gone through. We've looked for TSBs. I'm sorry, we haven't looked for TSBs yet. We have looked at the, we started by looking at codes, and it didn't throw any of the codes. We looked at our O2 sensors. We've done a visual inspection of the engine bay, of the exhaust system. We've looked to make sure it makes heat. We've looked to make sure that there's no other issues with this vehicle. As you know, is it back pressure related? Making sure everything else is working correctly. Our final step, made sure that we had good spark. The final step here is, before we were able to say, you know what, this thing just died from old age, is we want to make sure that there's no ECM updates, no kind of updates that are going to be made to the computer. In this specific case, we've got an update for a Chevy Cruze. There's a number of different updates that are out there. There's some for Toyotas. For example, if you search for the word sulfur for Toyota, you're going to see a whole host of Toyotas that need to have their ECM updated before you put on any kind of three-way catalyst. For the Chevy Cruze, this is a specific recall that says the catalytic converter can suffer internal damage. What are they going to do? They're going to reprogram the engine control module with calibrations that prevent a higher than expected temperatures. They're essentially tuning the Chevy Cruze. They're not throwing a burble tune on it or something like that. But what they're trying to do is make sure that this thing doesn't get so hot that it's going to overheat this catalytic converter, causing it to get that thermal damage that we worry so much about. So their correction here is to reprogram the ECM so that it's not going to do that. The Subaru ECM example below that. So that they say is the reprogram the ECM regarding catalytic converter on partial zero emissions vehicles with hard driving, high speed, or high acceleration. Catalytic converter operation might be affected. Reprogram the ECM to improve catalytic converter operation. Right? They're not adding precious metals through a reprogram of the ECM to improve the catalytic converter operation. What they're doing is changing the trigger point for a 420 code to improve the catalytic converter operation. It's going to operate the same. What they're doing is just making sure that it doesn't trigger check engine light before that warranty period expires. So what you need to do with most cars, as you've gone through all these other diagnostic steps, this is the final one, make sure there are no ECM and flash updates. Check Mitchell, Mitchell 1, ALLDATA, Identifix, heck, even just give Google a shot. There's a lot of information out there, and if you don't go and reflash that car, you're going to have a lot of problems. So here's one for the Chevy Cruze. This is a different recall, by the way, but this is one where they're talking about what's going on with the specific 1.4 liter, not the 1.8 like in this. This is the one that's fairly problematic. And what happens under good throttle, so you look at the top of the top graph here, throttle input is being accelerated for that first quarter of the timestamp. Then the RPMs drop. Notice what's happening when you're dropping the RPMs. Look at the next graph down there. You have biased rich readings circled in red every time that RPM drops. So no matter what's going on with this car, this is the way it's tuned from the factory. Every time you let off the throttle, it's going rich. Look at the rear sensor. How is a catalyst monitor going to deal with that when you have all that switching on the rear? It's not a switch, you got all sorts of switching happening on the rear saying the catalyst can't do this because the catalyst can't keep up with that kind of a rich fuel mixture. So this is an ECM that they need to update how this engine burns fuel literally so that it doesn't overheat and crack out that catalytic converter. If people don't do this ECM update, doesn't matter what cat you put back on it, it's going to fail. So we're talking about the Chevy Cruze. We're a little bit on a roll here. I wanted to mention, because people ask me all the time, what's the Chevy Cruze problem? And the problem with the Chevy Cruze is that there are so many problems with the Chevy Cruze. It is not one specific issue. And if you are an engineer that worked on this car, I'm sorry. But at some level, you've got to know that this is just, there are multiple things going on here. So depending on the year, there's an emissions recall to flash the ECM. They were incorrectly flashed during production. Failure to flash is going to result in the same issue happening to the replacement. Oil consumption issues due to soft piston ring material. Premature turbo seal failures, and we'll talk about a little bit more of that in a minute. Usually around 60,000 miles we start seeing those. Valve cover cracks around the PCV diaphragm causing vacuum leaks. There's a service campaign issue on this. The service campaign that's been issued on this. Intake manifolds on these guys crack. Exhaust manifold cracks causing the O2 sensors to pick up additional air and report a false leak condition on the PCM. Evap purge canister filling up with gas due to leaky purge solenoid. This happens when filling the tank. Causes a rich condition till the fuel level drops. Man, that is a head scratcher. GM's warm-up strategy, this is the best. So they're going to double the injection rate at a cold startup for the first minute of runtime. And they state it is completely normal to experience black smoke, hesitation, rough idle, and misfires during this startup period. Emissions from the startup routine can absolutely destroy a catalytic converter. So there are a lot of issues with the Chevy Cruze. There's not one specific issue. Some more issues with the Chevy Cruze, as well as a number of other vehicles, is having to do with this TSB. So this is PIP 5232C. The catalytic converter has failed for no obvious reason that could be identified through standard catalytic converter diagnostics. And we're talking the same 10 steps that we went through before. You didn't find an issue with this, you're trying to struggle to figure out what's causing this issue. And this is for all these cars listed here on the left. If you want to take a screenshot or rewatch this at some point in time, you can. What you should do is inspect the ground for possible corrosion or damage at the ground terminal ring, fasteners, or grounding surfaces. So these pictures that you see down to your right here are what are showing what's going on with these cars. Loss of ground is affecting the ECM's ability to read a signal from the O2 sensor, which then basically defaults back to the fuel trims at the factory, which are fairly rich, because that's when that startup is mostly happening. So it's like that startup tune. It's trying to heat up the cat as quickly as possible. The problem is if you're trying to heat up the cat as quickly as possible and you don't stop doing that, you end up overheating the cat. And that's because this loss of ground here. Got a mystery cat, can't figure it out. It could just be this ground issue. Catalytic converter installation tips, turbo or turd-o. So this is, vehicle might exhibit smoke out of the exhaust during acceleration or heavy power. Check for any leaks in the charge air cooler induction systems. Okay, cool. What year and model does this apply to? Oh, just all GM turbos from 2010 to 2020. The 2020 got kind of subtued there on a replacement, but 2010 to 2020 is when all of these turbos, it basically says a vehicle might come in with service due to the malfunction indicator lamp being eliminated. Customer may comment intermittently that the engine has reduced power. The technician may find any combination of history of the current diagnostic trouble codes, and then they list all those ones that we've been talking about already that have to do with air, have to do 420 codes. Just really problematic here. All of these things being caused by a leaking turbo.